Now if anyone has caused pain, he has caused it not to me, but in some measure, not to put it too severely, to all of you. For such a one, this punishment by the majority is enough. So you should rather turn to forgive and comfort him, or he may be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. So I beg you to reaffirm your love for him, for this is why I wrote, that I might test you and know whether you are obedient in everything. Anyone whom you forgive, I also forgive. Indeed, what I have forgiven, if I have forgiven anything, has been for your sake in the presence of Christ, so that we would not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. 2 Corinthians 2, 5 through 11. It has been nearly a year and a half since my friend J.D. Hall tendered his resignation as pastor of his church amid accusations of disqualifying sin. Yet in many ways it feels like it just happened, with many things just as cloudy now as they were in June of last year. During my relatively brief time in online discernment and polemics ministry, a ministry that itself has had a relatively brief existence, we endeavored to make it clear that what we did together was for the church. Not above her or beyond her, but for her. Yet the dynamics of the work we were doing in the wake of what happened left many challenging questions. What are the principles that guide online ministry? What is its relationship to the visible church? Are we obligated to accept the judgment of others? What is online ministry's relationship to church discipline? What happens if the church gets it wrong? What is the relationship between the church and marriages, chemical addiction, disqualifying sin, being above reproach, reputation, the changing role and expectations of pastors? While I didn't expect to get a firm answer to all of these questions, I was blessed to sit down and talk to my friend and see what the Lord has been doing in his family's life since he stepped out of the spotlight last year. Many answers were exactly what I had been praying for. Sadly, some of what I learned was heartbreaking.
I agreed to meet with you via Zoom, David, because there's a lot of people that have tried to get in touch with me, that want to get in touch with me, that want to share various things with me, and I feel like I've kind of abandoned them. I want to let them know how I'm doing. I know a lot of people have prayed for us and haven't even really been sure specifically what to pray for. So I just kind of felt like I owed it to people to say hello to them.
And we don't normally have I mean we've done a lot of podcasting over the years. Actually a lot of podcasts, but very rarely do we have Mandy Hall on the podcast with us. So this is not that this is a podcast, but how are you doing, Mandy? How's life?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kids are adjusting well to the new school, and I'm adjusting well to my new job, and I'm living out in the country. So it's been a change, but we're really enjoying it.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that's different? I mean, obviously a lot of things have changed. I mean, I know, a handful of things, and try not to interfere too much in new life, for you guys, but what are the biggest things that have changed between, the Montana life and now, the farm life, I should say?
I mean, not a lot. I mean, the farm itself,
it's nice. In Montana, we actually have Jordan home every night, JD home every night. So he's here with the family every night and all the weekend. And so we get to have dad around all the time now. So that's been a blessing.
Yeah, that's good. Keep him busy so he's not, causing trouble for the rest of us over here.
I'm sure more fences we can build, David.
We've built a lot of fences since we've been here. But in terms of the culture, I mean, flyover America is pretty much flyover America. Red state's pretty much a red state, and country's pretty much a country. So there hasn't been that much to adjust to. In terms of our family life, a lot has changed, like Mandy said, in terms of my schedule. So I'm just a homebody now. So that's
Are the things you miss about the way that things were not too long ago?
Who, me?
Or either one of you. I know because I know a lot of things have changed, right? So I mean, are there?
No. Um, I think I wrote something to you a while back, David, and I said I lost a lot of things, but looking back, nothing that I lost wasn't worth losing. So, um, for the most part, it was good to lose those things. I didn't need those things, and even when I had them, I didn't really want those things. I kind of felt like I was shouldered with them or saddled with them. But I lost a lot that needed to get lost.
Yeah. What would you say is best about life now? Because I mean, I know I've already said it a few times, but so many things change so fast, and so sometimes it's hard to just step back and count, like, okay, what's different now versus what versus the way that it was, and really appreciate. Because I mean, change is hard, but really appreciate what's been gained by all of this change.
I think family life is a lot better. Our daughter just turned 20 and she got married in August, and amazing young man she's married to. We couldn't have been, I mean, God has truly blessed her and blessed us with him in our lives. So we're thankful for that change. But overall, just our family life, I think, is much stronger now.
I've gotten a few pictures of what seem to be farm animals running around in the house. Is that something you can confirm or deny?
Well, I don't know about the house. I guess if they're well, we've had some babies in the house, I guess.
I think I saw one. It looked like it was either one of the children or it was a goat. I couldn't quite tell.
We had a couple baby goats at one time.
So
So it's just one day at a time. No, nothing terribly exciting, which for us is a good thing.
yeah, do you miss the the relative insanity of the Montana life and the all the stuff you were busy with what I guess a little over a year now, right?
Yeah, no, not in the slightest.
Jordan, do you miss ministry? I mean, vocational ministry.
Yeah, no, no. Um, I always felt like I was thrust into it. But David, I'm sure I've had conversations with you over the years where I talked about the stress and the burden of it. Um, to have 100 or 120 people with their problems somehow become your problems. Never knowing when the phone is going to ring, being gone from my family so much, and when you're there to solve somebody else's family crisis, um, usually the question on the top of their head at 2 o'clock in the morning is, "Who's with your family right now?" It's their concerns become your concerns, but your concerns are seldom theirs. And um, I don't miss it. And for the life of me, um, I can't figure out why guys who seem like they just can't get out and go do something else, why they would persist. Being a pastor, and I've said this for a long time. It's an awful existence. It just is. Um, the stress and the weight and the burden of everybody else's problems becoming your problems. Feeling like a politician that you have to make everybody happy with the decisions you make. You're wondering what the fallout of each possible decision is. Um, you know, I, the private sector has always been kind to me, and the pastorate seldom has. So I look at guys like Perry Noble or Mark Driscoll who just don't know when to quit. And David, you've heard me say that for years. That if you're in the ministry and you become disqualified, get out, stay out. Um, and so, if nothing else, I hope to practice what I preach at that. It's the last thing I want to do. And not as though there aren't blessings that are associated with it, but I think I've surprised people for years when I've talking about my son, saying the last thing I'd want them to be is a pastor. That life is hard. I don't miss it.
And Mandy being a pastor's wife now, not being a pastor's wife now for well over a year, is it a welcome change? Or are there things that you miss about being a pastor's wife?
It is a good change. I don't really miss much about it. Um, it's actually hard. We have a really good church we go to now. I love our pastor, good, solid Bible preaching man who stands up for God's word, and appreciate that. But it's really hard to get back into a church. It's hard to let a guard down, to be really active. So I'm hoping that time will heal that. God has already healed a lot of it, but it's challenging sometimes.
When all these changes kind of, all this stuff happened last year and all these changes went down, I mean, there was, there was a lot of confusion, at least because JD's existence is at that point was so much like online and internet ministry and all the stuff that, you know, is kind of in that realm. And it seemed like there was a lot of confusion about what went down and kind of the details because people can't know from far away. Um, and I know there were some folks in public ministry that I thought really, maybe got out over their skis a little bit. I remember, men that I respect, Chris Roseborough, Phil Johnson, Justin Peters, men who I very much look up to in terms of doing this kind of ministerial work. I thought, they didn't know enough necessarily to be reacting the way that they did. JD, do you feel you feel bitter? I mean, is something that that hurt you at that point? Is that something that how does that sit with you now?
I want to try not to come across as bitter or angry because clearly, um, you know, I mean, I was addicted to Xanax, to a prescription drug. Um, and a pastor shouldn't be given to much wine, and that would include anything else that could take over their mind. Um, it was quite it was done quite innocently enough, and doctor says, here, it's make you feel better. Sure enough, it did. Um, and didn't even realize that I had an issue until the rest of the world did. Obviously, I should have, but I just didn't. And neither did those who were closest to me either. Um, so, like, I want to take 100% blame for that. I want to be really reserved in what I say about anybody else because I don't want it to appear as though I'm blaming them or I mean, like, I want to take all the blame in the world. But I'll say that when I was 1,500 miles away from home in rehab, I didn't hear from Phil Johnson or Chris Roseborough or Justin Peters. And then when I got out of rehab and got settled and we bought a new place and started a new life, and I let them know that I'm okay now and sent them an update. I didn't hear from Phil Johnson or Chris Roseborough. I mean, they couldn't even say, "Hey, I'm glad that you're well." I think Justin said, "That's great." Like, at least he texted a response. So one of the reasons why I cut everybody out of my life, I mean, the people I've talked to, I can count on one hand. I've talked to you. I've texted a little bit with Cody. I talked just a little bit with Seth. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think I've had a phone conversation with Michael O'Fallon and with Carrie Gordon. Maybe I've texted with Carrie. That's it. That's the only people I've talked to at all. Because the way people treated me as soon as they're like, "Oh, he has an addiction. He's disqualified." Apparently, being disqualified from ministry, I kind of feel like, so far as Chris and Justin and Phil goes, that pretty well disqualified me from being their friend. It disqualified me from having them give a crap about how I was doing rehab or after rehab. It's just kind of a squaring off. So it's like, you know, and at the same time, I'm in rehab. You know who I'm hearing from? Beth Moore and JD Greer. And like these people that clearly have a reason not to like me are sending gift cards to the house and hoping that I'm okay. And, you know, I at first I took it as they're just, you know, spiking the football in my face. But I think they were being genuinely human. And I didn't see a lot of genuine humanity from men who I thought that I was friends with. I tried to discern who are my friends and who found me useful to them. And I really could. So I cut everybody out of my life. And Mandy, a few people have gotten a hold of me, like Don and Jim and some other guys, and just they wanted to talk to me. And I remember asking Mandy, like, what do they want? I can't help them. There's nothing I can give them. Like I'm angry. I'm like I'm trying to keep my head above water. I'm trying to keep my sanity. I'm trying to start a new life. I'm trying to cling tight to Christ. I can't help them with whatever problem they have. I don't have any advice to give. I need advice. I don't have any advice to give. And Mandy's like, I think they just want to tell you that they love you. I think they just want to tell you that they're praying for you. And that was like hard to grasp. Like, why would they reach out to me and tell me they love me and they're praying for me if I can't do anything for them? I don't have any advice to give. I don't have any resources to give them or to point them in the right direction. I can't talk discernment, polemics, theology, politics. I don't have anything to offer them. Why on earth are they reaching out to me? Do they not know that I don't have anything? And it was hard for me to like soak into my brain that some people just love me for no other reason than they love me.
It gets mixed up where you think that the reason that people care about me is because of my usefulness to them.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good way to put it. I mean, that's what I was convinced, that it was my usefulness to people that made them love me. And that's why, you know, I would be at a parishioner's house until 2 o'clock in the morning, or I would drive 800 miles to be with someone who was sick. Because it's like they're only going to love me if I pour myself out. And, you know, it's just now that I'm starting to realize some of those people just love me because they love me. But it was too painful and frankly too hard to tell who's who. So I just cut everybody out of my life. You know, what I've detoxed from more than anything is the internet. You know, like I don't have Google on my phone. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't care about current affairs. That's what I needed to detox from more than absolutely anything at all. One time I was like desperately ill, and it was probably Xanax looking back, although I'm not sure. And people needed me across the state, and Mandy called it. And I kind of got upset at Mandy.
He was upset, and I emailed both these ladies, said, hey, Jordan is not doing well. He should not be on the road driving in the winter 8 hours to do whatever you need him to do. And they're like, oh, we really need him here. Of course, he went. Didn't listen to me, but he went.
I really did think that I was going to work myself to death, and I was pretty okay with that. I was not feeding myself like of food or anything. I just thought I would one day just collapse. But in my head, it would be like a glorious death. It'd be like David Brainerd or something. I just gave up my entire life for Christ, and I died of being, sick and maltreated, malnourished.
Do you think that? And
now it was stupid, is what it was.
Do you think at this point that this was a loving wake up call from God, to say, hey, this is not the direction that you should be going right now? There's
A
You're,
wake up call would be like God brought it to my attention, and I came to, and I was like, I got to change course. No, this is like a body slam from God.
Well, I
Calling
think
it.
God gave him a wake up call. He didn't listen to the wake up call, so God had to body slam him. So I think there was a wake up call, which was not
Yeah.
received.
No one could remove me from the life I was in. Nobody. I mean, I was, David, I was a force in nature. Nobody was removing me except God, and He sure enough did.
the speed at which things happened and changed, last year, like, I mean, I remember not knowing what was going on, and being concerned enough that, I mean, you and I've had this conversation before, right? I felt like I got to protect the work, this legacy that's really been put together, even for your sake, just because, like for me, polemics and discernment ministry, is such a big part of my spiritual journey, over the last 10 years,
And
you know.
for the record, I didn't fall pulpit and pin in you guys doing what you had to do to preserve the work. I wanted the work preserved. One of the most painful things for me by far is that some in the church removing my sermons with sermon audio. That's my blood, sweat, tears. I don't even understand that. I mean, I heard that it was taken down because people who listened to them, years worth of sermons had contacted Mandy and were like, "Where are the sermons at? We still need the sermons." So like I'm happy that a lot of that work was preserved. I think what bothered me, you asked about Chris and Justin and Bill. From what I've heard from you, David, they had contacted you out of concern of how you should brand yourself or rebrand yourself away from me and serve and save the kind of the integrity and the volume of work, save the reputation, I guess.
I, well, and I think that might have been a little bit concern for me personally or the other guys personally. I don't because what they said was, hey, you need to throw the name Protestia in the trash can, pulpit and pin in the trash can. It's tainted, it can't move forward, anymore because of this. And I remember thinking to myself, but even as Christians, like, we sin. We don't have some sort of we can't ever have a ministry that is run by perfect people, So I was stubborn. I'm like, no, I don't want to change it. Like, I think what we're doing is good. And we always talked about that ministry moving forward as it's not based off of you or off of me or off of some, essential person. It's a valid Christian ministry in its own right.
I think what kind of hurt me deeply though is knowing that they showed far more concern for the reputation of the website I built and had more conversations with you about how to preserve its reputation than they had with me about how I was doing. And so it kind of solidified in my mind that these guys don't care about me. They cared about the work I did. They care about the work I did. And reputation does have a lot to do with it, because it's like when Brandon House, for example, was accusing Justin Peters of creeping on his daughter's Instagram photos and bikinis. I was the guy that Justin called to ask how to do it. And I didn't understand at the time, like, so what? He wants to say you were looking at some photos on it. Like, why does that matter? But it was reputational, and that was everything. Or the reason why Brandon hated my guts at Worldview Weekend is because, I don't think I've ever been very vocal about this. I don't know if I've ever shared this or not, but the whole brouhaha was because he blackmailed MacArthur to speak at Worldview Weekend Branson, because I sent him a screenshot where Phil Johnson had used the word pissed. And nobody wanted him to know, nobody wanted him to tell the world that he used that dirty little word. And so much of celebrity evangelism is about reputation and appearance and all of that there's no room for a guy, who was addicted to Xanax. And that's fine with me. I don't I don't relish that at all. I don't miss it at all. I made a dent. I'm done making a dent. And now I'm done. That's okay.
And do you think that, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, like hold your feet to the fire, but do you think that there's that God may open up the door for other, public ministerial opportunities in the future? Because there's a lot of public ministry that's being done by non-pastors.
No,
Yours truly counts as that. pew
no,
sitters.
listen, I lived a life of 10 men. I was basically involved in 4 ministries at once. I started organizations and websites and ministries and preached.
Do you have to do it at that level? I mean, is there,
I'm done.
like if you're like a guy in a team of guys, versus the guy,
I think God has given Jordan a lot of gifts, and it's a shame for him not to use the gifts that God has given him. At the same time, I do appreciate having my husband at home.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? I mean, it's like I'm at the point now where the pastors at my church accept what I'm doing in terms of ministry.
Okay, so
they're a little afraid of it sometimes, but they accept that it exists. And let's just say the conversations that they have with me and the conversations that they have with other gentlemen at the church are a little different.
So let me make this point. It wasn't about Xanax. So I was really convinced, like I was going to the doctor, and I told you the other day, I sent my medical records to you, David. So I wanted there to be full trust in what I'm saying here. I was going to the doctor saying something's wrong with me. Like I can't find my words. I'm slur my speech a little bit once in a while, especially late at night, and balance.
I remember you telling the Bulldogmatic Bible study this as
it
was happening.
My business partners, like I was very open with it because I didn't think it was Xanax. And so, they did a blood test. They said it's vitamin D, and you think they would have known because he was the one who prescribed the Xanax, but whatever. But as soon as I really figured out after I melted down in June what the issue was, I was not in rehab like jonesing for Xanax. Like I've never since been like, I wish I had withdrawal so bad. I don't think a lot of people know this. Like they life flighted me to Billings from seizures caused by withdrawal. I mean, Xanax withdrawal kills people. I had it super, super bad. And so when I melted down in June, I was right there at the very worst phase of that. By the time I got to rehab, that was all over. So, even like last month, I went to this this group, like NA type thing, a Christian based thing. I met a guy and he was recovering. I'm like, yeah, I'll go with you tonight. I thought maybe I'll get something out of this. I didn't get anything out of it. I was in there for like 10 minutes listening to these people talk about their drug addictions. I'm like, I'm going to get the heck up out of here. I have nothing in common with these people. I don't have any urge or desire. So like I was in rehab, but the most beneficial part of that was being alone and away from everything. It was being by myself and away from all the craziness in Montana. That's what I got out of it. The real thing that I was addicted to was work. That was my drug. That was my drug. That's what I was addicted to. That's what was killing me. That's why I couldn't sleep at night. That's why I couldn't turn my brain off. That's why I took on way too much. That's why I tried to be everything for everybody all the time. So just like if somebody had an addiction to a substance, and somebody comes along and says, well, maybe in the right amount, in the right setting, you can have a little bit of Xanax, right? So like it's a booze and tattoos part 2, right? Like in the right situation, you can have some alcohol. You go, no, that's crazy. So then when I hear people posit, maybe one day you could get back at it, you could do something. No, get the heck up, get away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm a goat farmer. Like I raise sheep now, chickens. I've served enough. I get up at in the morning and I take my kids to school and I go to work and I come home, I do some shoring, I eat some food, I go to bed. That's my life. I almost want to say like, get the hints behind me, Satan. I hear you saying, maybe one day you can do something else. No, that's the drug that I have to stay away from is being busy.
So rewinding back to June of last year, um, I know from our point of view and from my point of view, I mean, in Colorado, part of the reason, you know, Jordan and I were just talking about it, he felt like everybody threw him under the bus, including us. And I remember it in June, not knowing from over here what to believe, like what was going on. And so we made the decision like, well, the ministry exists for the church, and it's I would argue subservient to the church, and it was very clearly a ministry of Fellowship Baptist Church on the website. We're very clearly a ministry of the church, and so we didn't know any differently than to just submit to to whatever the church was deciding at that point, which is why we did what we did. But you rewind the clock back to June, and how did all that go down from your perspective? I know there was a this the confusion between what was Xanax and what was other health problems and things, what kind of came to a head back in June.
Well, it was so when I got a DUI, I was absolutely convinced that it was a vitamin D deficiency. I mean, that's what my doctors had told me. I went to them with what clearly is symptoms of Xanax, and they would know because they prescribed it, but they didn't see that that was the issue. Then I had withdrawal that literally almost killed me. That's not an overstatement. And so their solution to my seizures or whatever they thought they were panic attacks. The solution was Xanax. And then I majorly overdosed in June, and then at that point I knew that it was Xanax. And I think that people who are, and the booze and tattoo guys are probably having a field day with this, right? Me, who's been against addiction, is addicted to stuff. I don't think people understood that an addiction can happen innocently enough, but
well, it reminded me of when Rush Limbaugh got addicted to OxyContin,
or Jordan Peterson to Xanax. He had to go to rehab in Russia for a long time to get off that stuff. Benzodiazepine is a bad classification of drug. It's terrible. And, the crazy thing is when they put me on that years ago, I didn't even know why I was taking it. Like, I think they put me on it for sleep. I'm still not sure. It just, over time, it just more and more of a hold on me. But it worked for what it was supposed to do until it didn't. I don't know if that was reverse tolerance or what, but then it was, I wanted to be a good guy who had an addiction and got rid of it, but it turns out I just became an addict to people. One of the more hurtful things is that one of the guys put in charge of my restoration at church texted me and Mandy both, once an addict, always an addict. This is while I was in rehab. So I'm in rehab, hearing from the church back home, once an addict, always an addict. So that's who I am. I'm an addict, and I'm always going to be an addict. And it made me so mad because it's so counter-antithetical to the gospel, so contradictory. Like the entire ministry at Polemics Report was built upon the premise that once gay, not always gay, right? Mm-hmm. Like once a sinner, not always a sinner.
Yeah, name your sin.
Once you're painted as an addict, then it's okay to superimpose on you every other sin that you've committed or not. It's like once you can color someone as an addict, you can accuse them of anything. And they have no defense. I mean, you could accuse them of literally anything at that point, and they've no defense because after all, that guy's an addict. So on one hand, I don't care. So I'm not going back into ministry, whatever. But on the other hand, I was disappointed that the people I surrounded myself with and preached the gospel to for so long really seemed to not understand it.
Well, when it first happened in May, they were very supportive. But then after the second incident in June, they started distancing themselves from my family. Um, they gave me ungodly advice, and I would only listen to Christian psychologists. We were seeing Dr. Majors. Thankfully, God kept me listening to him only and not the church family that gave me ungodly advice. So it was very difficult because we had those relationships with those people that no one, I talk to no one these days from the church. I'll reach out to several people that are not part of the church, so part of the world, but they're the ones that were there to support me. And they would come and help me pack and get the house ready. One of the dear ladies is a good Christian, not a part of the church. She would send activities for my kids to do, so they would be busy while we're doing this because my little kids had no idea what was going on. I kept them pretty sheltered. They didn't know what was happening because dad being gone was normal for them. So dad being gone, dad just gone. We're not seeing him on Sunday, but dad's gone. So it was nice that I had that support of those ladies there to help me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to throw it out there, some of the ungodly advice was, I mean, some of them told her to divorce me. I mean, some of the men put in charge of my restoration, quote unquote, we have the text messages, told her to leave me or to divorce me. And I'm like, this is not at all why? Like, what did you ever? This is in a monkey see, monkey do situation. You didn't see the monkey do this like that. I never would encourage someone to divorce their spouse. It was mind blowing. That was more earth shattering to us than absolutely anything. Like, what happened to this church family? Like, what happened? And then when we tried to share it with the rest of them, here's what they're telling us. I mean, not an apology, nothing.
And that you're saying that Mandy got text messages from people who were in church leadership, like deacons, elders.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to put words in
A
your mouth.
deacon.
So someone who held, I just want to get this straight. So someone who held an office, an actual ordained office in the church, which both elder and deacon are. I mean, not a a governing and teaching office, but certainly, I mean, someone that's supposed to meet biblical qualifications to hold this office actually texted you and said, because Jordan has this addiction problem, you should divorce him.
Yes. Yeah. They were upset with me for not doing the things that they told me to do. And
Well, and primarily that was they forbade us from speaking. So they forbade me from talking to my family or my family talking to me. And when we told them, Dr. Majors, this was the Christian doctor that Kerry Gordon set us up with, when he said that if I'm going to recover and become whole, obviously I have to be in good standing with my wife and kids. They got mad and demanded to speak to him, to rebuke him for usurping their authority. I mean, it was pretty crazy stuff. And so, because Mandy would talk to me like you would expect a wife to, they were really, mad at her.
I listened to Dr. Majors, and that's exactly what Dr. Majors is telling me, to be there to support Jordan. He said it wouldn't be easy, but it's what he needs. And as a godly woman, I stand by my husband. Christ never forsake me, so why should I forsake the husband, the person God gave to me? So I was there, even though people didn't want me to be there. I stood by Jordan.
And what was the basis that was their explanation for why they thought that you should, basically not have contact with him?
That's kind of
I think the last time Jordan was at church, he was not himself. He was kind of irrational. And I know a lot of them were afraid he would hurt me. And so I think they were scared for me, even though I told them Jordan would never hurt me. I wasn't scared for that, but I knew that they just thought that his behavior wasn't good for me to be around and for the children to be around.
But their insistence we not talk continued even when I was 1,500 miles away.
David, that deacon invited me and my kids to go live in his basement with him so he could protect us.
He was the same one who, when she said she didn't feel like going to church because it felt weird going to church without her husband, who said, "Oh, a lot of men would line up to take you to church." And he was the same one who emailed my dad or texted my dad actually this week, giving him coordinates to his house so that I could show up and he could have a gunfight with me. That was this week.
This is like the phone call you've gotten, or a text message, or an email? Or?
He texted my dad his address so that he could give it to me and we could have a gunfight.
But he did it on a burner phone.
But he left his address on it. I think it's safe to say that not a single thing the church did in any way helped the situation or helped Mandy or the kids in any way. In fact, every move made by the leadership after I left almost seemed designed to cause as much hurt and pain on the family as humanly possible. And if it wasn't by design, it speaks to the magnitude of the leadership's overall incompetence. It was unbelievable to watch.
Did that bother you as you know, the primary shepherd of that flock for 15 years?
Yeah, or? It's like, so like one of the guys that day in June, what they did is they took me and they dropped me off at the hospital in Billings, 4 hours away from home. I didn't even have shoes. And one of the guys that did that, he had gotten a DUI, alcohol. His wife went on vacation. I babysat him the whole weekend at her request to keep him from drinking, right? So like that's how I treated him when he was in the throes of addiction. He left me 4 hours from home without shoes. When someone struggled, we showed grace. When we talked restoration, we laid out a simple process for people to follow. It's like, where did these people get this? Since when do we do this? Other than removing my sermons, that's hurt me more than anything. It's like, I didn't teach you people this. I didn't teach you to behave this way. And so, yeah, do I feel like a total failure because, the moment I leave, it seems like they lose their mind in every bit of ecclesiastical training they've ever had? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I think part of it was my notoriety. They felt like they had to throw me under the bus and distance themselves from me as soon as possible. The fact is they knew and supported everything that I did. I'll say it again. They knew and supported every single thing I did. But they had to make it seem real fast like that wasn't the case.
It seemed like they came out and acted like somehow they were surprised by all of the online, the polemics and discernment and the political involvement and all that. But I mean, I've seen videos of elders and deacons of the church being very overtly supportive of all of that.
Talking about the church wasn't really our motivation for doing this. I don't know how much we want to dwell on that. Like, God bless them. I can honestly say I've prayed for them, not every day, but almost every day since I've been alive. Mandy, I think it's safe to say, had a more harsher attitude towards them than I had. I wish them the best, but
Mandy, I could tell, felt, probably still has some, pretty strong feelings of, hurt and rejection, just because it was like they're there and supposedly, it's a family, and then all of a sudden they're not there.
I think Mandy knows better than any other person on earth what I sacrifice for them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was just really challenging, getting the house that we lived in for almost 15 years ready to put on the market. So much stuff I had to do. I had no help from the church. I had to send my kids to live with their grandparents. No one cared from the church. I would go at my job, see a newspaper article sitting on the nurse's desk, and no one cared from the church. One lady from the church texted that works at the hospital and she said, the supervisor came in my office and said she wants you to know she's praying for you. And I said, well, at least somebody cares. No response. My daughter going to the store and talking to someone, and then we hear back how she harassed this lady at the store. That's part of the church. She would get people that at the restaurant would talk about things, and it was hard on her. Just the way that people treated you that were supposed to be in the church that showed no kindness towards me or my children. It was very challenging.
And it seems like there were people who, rather than being interested in supporting, a a biblical covenant marriage, seemed like they that seemed to be of no concern to them. Because all marriages are tough. I mean, like, I don't care who you are, like, Christian, non-Christian, whatever. Marriage is always a challenge, right? And so then something happens, or something is going sideways, and we would expect as a church family to come alongside husbands and wives and say, that's God intends for you two to be together, and to support one another, and not to support one of you without the other, but it didn't seem like that they really took that angle.
But we have a good church now we go to. Took a while to find one, but he's a good pastor, good biblical preaching.
It was difficult because I went to, I don't want to say what town I was at, but I went to one, and it was like a Reformed Baptist church. And that's when the family was still up north. And, the pastor's like, hey, everybody, we got JD Hall here on the back row. I'm like, oh my gosh. That was right when news was breaking about stuff. And then went to a different church, kind of the same thing, and then went to a different church. And like the first week, the pastor's like, I know who you are. It wasn't not in a bad way, but then we found out that they were we found out they were SBC. Never would have thought that. He's like, yeah, you might want to. He was real nice about it. He's like, you might want to go to church somewhere.
He said, oh, yeah, we're part of the SBC. Jordan, I look at you like, what the heck?
Like, why? Why are you?
Like, what?
And then like the church that we're at now, when we first got to the sanctuary, guy looks at me and goes, you got a website, right? And I'm like, oh gosh. And I tell him, listen, like, we just want to go to church. Like, I don't want it to be a whole thing. We just need to go to church. He's like, I'm going to go tell the pastor you're here. And this is like a larger church,
He's all nervous.
He's all nervous.
You were nervous.
I was nervous. And everybody was nervous. And so like he ran and whispered in the pastor's ear on stage, like, JD Hall's back there. And
pastor didn't care.
I told him, I'm like, I just want to go to church. And they blessed us in that they don't seem to really care who I am, which is nice. And the first week we were there, Protestia was in the bulletin. So like they have this church newsletter, and they're quoting Protestia and the dissenter. And sometimes the pastor says things in a sermon that I'm pretty sure I know where he got that from. But they're like, he's really, really awesome. And, they've been a big blessing to us.
And not SBC.
You know, one thing we want people to know that we've worked with over the years that just suddenly got cut off from us is that, you know, I think I'm about at the point where, you know, I can maybe take your call or take your email. I just did not have the headspace for that for a long time. But, you know, I'm going to ask David to do me a favor, and that is if you were a pulpiteer or if you worked with Protestia or Pulpit Pin or Polemics Report or even ministry in the church, the local church, and you want to get a hold of me, you know, I'm not passing out my cell phone number ever, I guess, or my address. But David, what I'd like is if somebody would like to send you an email, if you would kindly forward that on to me. You know, I feel like I owe it to certain people. You know, let's say I baptized you or I taught you something or I worked with you at some point. I don't want you out of my life forever. It's just I haven't had room for it. You know, reach out to David. David thinks it's a good thing. He can pass it on.
I remember there at one point, because at that point I was starting to piece together kind of what had happened, and I mean I had talked to doctors that I knew and you know people that we knew. We were like, yeah, this is exactly like this is Xanax withdrawal. This is symptoms of Xanax. This is what happens, and starting to piece together that you know some of our reaction or my reaction, even talking to either one of you on the phone, was an overreaction from just not knowing all of the really how everything went down.
That was probably the darkest day for me in rehab when I talked to you and you told me that you didn't believe me about whether or not I remembered some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to Chris Roseborough the same day. That was the one time he called me in rehab, and he just yelled at me. I honestly don't know what the point of his call was. The church had called him, and so he just rebuked me up one side and down the other. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. And then you were talking about what happened. And I'm like, I don't remember. You're like, well, yeah, you do. You're just saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I legit, like, Google Xanax. Like, I don't. that's
yeah.
that's the table here, but that's like how Xanax works. Like, I legitimately don't remember. That's not me trying to avoid responsibility. I'm saying when I came down south for a little while, I met with Pastor Michael and Pastor Harold. They came up and met me at this cabin out in the woods I was at. And I had met with them both on a trip the previous year and did not remember it at all. I don't remember visiting with either one of them. So, like, you know, I'd say 6 months or so, like pretty much all that year, 2022, I don't remember hardly anything. You know? So, you know, and that's sad to admit. And I take full blame for anything that I might have done during that time. But like, for people saying, well, you're just lying about that, like, that's just how that drug works.
Well, and I think that they read, I mean, especially people that were, you know, theological opponents or enemies or however you want to say it of you know our theological positions. They just read their assumptions. Well, those guys are patriarchal jerks and you know they oppress women and they do this and that, so they read that into whatever you're saying, you know. But
you know, I want to come back around to, you know, why I wanted to visit with you tonight, and that I want to let people know that have been praying for me. Like, I haven't forgotten about you. You know, I know you love me. I know you've been praying for me. I know that it's frustrating not to be able to get a hold of me, because I'm sure there are still people that were with the church at the time that didn't really agree with how things went down, but didn't know how to reach out necessarily. Um, I just wanted to explain why for the past year and a half or so I've not talked to anybody, and it's just because, you know, you think the church is going to be there with you to get you through whatever you need to get through. And when you find out that's not the case and they become adversarial, or your friends like, Bill or Justin or whoever. And then the people who treat you kindly are Beth Moore and JD Greer. You understand, at that point, a head can really spin going, who are my friends? Who is with who can I trust? Who can I confide in? Who can I speak to? And even when I met with you guys, I think I was just coming out of rehab. I visited with you and Dustin and whoever. At the time, when you asked me to visit with you, I didn't think I thought you would be adversarial. I was reluctant to talk with you. I think I even said something about, you've already hung me, or you've already, I was just under the assumption you were harsher on me than what you were, because I'm not reading what you're, I just know that to some extent you had to distance yourself from me. I think I assumed the worst, but I didn't know, and to some extent I still don't. Who are my friends out there? But if you've been praying for me, like, we need it, we love you. I hope that. So Alan Miracle sent me a text the other day. He said, I think God is going to use you mightily. And I think I texted him back something like, well, if you figure out how, let me know. I think perhaps the best witness that I can have at this point is to stand by my own preaching, that when you're disqualified, go get a job. You don't need ministry. It's not your identity. Be of some use to the world other than preaching or whatever. I want to be able to practice what I preach, to say, you know what? Yeah, I went away like I should, so that Christ could be most glorified without me getting in the way. That I don't have to be in the light, which, me being in the light would cast a shadow on Christ. I don't want that to happen. I want to glorify God by being a dad, being a husband, working with my own two hands, and getting through life one day at a time, like all these Christians have to do who were never behind the pulpit, and live like one of the sheep. I want to show my kids that I don't have to be the guy behind the pulpit to go to church. That God is still good, even though I don't have what I once had. That's okay, because I have what God wants.